Item is the. Now we were just going to move. We're just going to do a precedence of business. No, so we're still on a working program. Panuku. So we'll do Panuku, and then we were going to do. Just going to move. Okay, good. We've got it. Just making sure we're doing it in the right order. So we're now on item 12, which is the Panuku development item. So, David and John, welcome.
I have it moved, Madam Chair. Move.
You happy to move?
Yeah, I'll second it.
And seconded?
Yeah.
Councillor Wood.
Morning.
John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, for those, just to reiterate, the team members, David Rankin, who's looking after principally this work stream with assistance from Fiona Knox, and also on my left, Alan Young, who heads up the development for Panuku. So the report is in front of you, and really my comments are brief. Just wanted to acknowledge the work from the that really started back in the early part of the year when Panuku was still transitioning, and that work with David Taylor and Fiona Knox has been an important platform to establish the qualitative and quantitative analysis you have in front of you and the recommendations today. And it really brings to, I suppose, the end, the first phase of pulling together the necessary work to actually determine the two new transformed locations for Panuku. I think the next phase, as we move from today on through to probably March next year, is going to be as if not more interesting than the work that's been concluded over the last 6 to 9 months. And the reason for that is because as we start to work on the two new transformed locations, assuming that it is endorsed by you today, then we will start to see some of the coordination, the consultation with the various community groups to bring together a coherent plan for these two locations. And it is no accident that the two locations actually do have some relationship to each other in the context of a regional setting. And really the important part of work for Panuku going forward now is really to looking at the objectives that you have required from us to meet, really starting to develop some big moves or commercial propositions around these two areas so that we can actually go forward and implement with the agreement of all stakeholders, community and other groups. So, Madam Chair, in your hands, if you would like us to talk further to the report, which either David or Fiona can do, or whether you'd like just to go to question and answers.
My recommendation is that we just go straight to questions. I think we'll take the very good report as read. So we'll go to Councillor Crum, and then we've got many others. Councillor Crum.
Thanks. An excellent report, she says with a smile. I have three questions, hopefully all just in quick succession and not major. But the first is the suggestion, suggestion should ADC agree today, for a high-level project plan. So is that a new PDA way of looking at things, just in comparison with the master plan process and coming back here in April? So a question around that. Your process, and this is a standard process that you'll adopt for all locations. The other is on paragraph 31C, so just assurance around which set of current plans for east-west that you're referring to. So as you would know, for Onehunga, the east-west transport designated route is of high importance to the wharf area, and to confirmation, should it be so today, for Onehunga in the top category. And also an assurance on keeping a close eye on what's happening and how you're doing that with the East-West Link. And the third question is, just out of curiosity, paragraph 14, in where you mention some historical barriers to progress and that you will be reviewing those, that's part of the mix. So understanding what's been before and what barriers have been before in regards to development. So are those historical barriers that you refer to ACPL historic barriers, or are they across council group? Just some clarification in that regard.
Through the chair, perhaps I'll answer the first question, Fiona the second, and then David the third. The first question is relatively easy to answer. The high-level project plans are essentially a plan to get everyone coordinated, and basically it's really how we plan for the implementation. How do we get from where we are now in terms of a number of different plans, coordinate those, agree everything with everyone, come up with the commercial propositions that are going to add value, and then get to market. And essentially that's the plan that we want to come back to you with next March to get the sign-off, and that will provide assurance for our board that we have interpreted the shareholder objectives correctly and related them to these locations, and that consequently that there is a deep delegation given to the board to then go and to get on with that plan.
Thanks.
Anything else, Councillor Crone?
That's the question.
Not on that question.
Not on that, yeah.
So just with regard to the East-West Link, we had a meeting with NZTA and Auckland Transport last week. We've seen the material that will inform that is informing the detailed business case to NZTA. So we know that they're also entering into a more of a detailed design phase, and we recognise that there's the timing's quite good for Panuku and NZTA to kind of share information and work on that together in the lead up to the consent process. So our conversations are just being quite early at this stage, but the timing is quite good for considering particularly what that means for the connection to the wharf back to the town centre.
I agree on the timing.
And can you hear me, Councillor? Yeah. The final question, they can be a whole mix of factors. They could be organisational barriers across the family. They could be planning issues. There have been sites in various locations where we've been waiting, like a lot of others, for the proposed unitary plan to take effect. In some cases they're infrastructure issues, in some cases they're at the particular stage historically the market demand hasn't been there, and now our sense is that's changing. A good example would be apartments in Manukau, where the market's evolved over the last few years quite markedly. In other cases, like Onehunga, I know you're interested in, the port has been there as a possibility. There is surplus port land there, and now it's sort of emerged as a concrete reality. So there are a whole collection of different things that have contributed to barriers in the past that are clearing, or with our new mandate and extra resources and so on, we're confident that we can make progress on.
Okay. Councillor Darby.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, David, John, and team. Just in terms of your recommendations, I'm just wondering whether it's also worth noting the unlock locations, as in Figure 4. Chair, I just think this is good to signal that the whole idea of this new CCO was to put those tentacles out into wider Auckland, and the unlock locations, they don't really need our confirmation because there's a whole lot of work being done around them. But I'm just wanting to get some feedback from John, David, Alan on maybe just noting those under the A.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
If that's the case, I don't really need to move an amendment if the I'm fine with chair, the member Taipari and Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. I think it's good to signal that there is wider work happening, not just in these two areas. Councillor Quaggs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of the priority development location selections, it talks about Panuku attention to stimulate interest and activity around residential, talks about Panuku investment in other areas like Old Papatoetoe. Investment will be required to stimulate interest and activity. Just give us a sense of what would be required to stimulate interest and activity.
As we go through the high-level project plans, that's basically what we're referring to in terms of looking at the big moves to what commercial propositions we can take to market. So as we go through, we'll come back to you with definitive proposals around that, and that will form part of the report back to you in March.
So right now, you don't have any specific investments on the part of Panuku that would be any idea what those kind of investments would be?
That's correct, Councillor. We have a number of ideas, but at this point, no recommendations.
Okay. And as you say, John, they will be brought back to us in March?
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, I know the Chair and I are really pleased about Henderson, and I'm very pleased that we're actually, thank you Councillor Darby for putting in the unlocked locations in there, because it's very easy for us to put the focus on the big stuff, which is the right thing to do, and as Mr Ross said earlier, Manukau is almost a city in its own right, and it does need huge transformation to flourish. But I don't want us to forget these unlock, because they're more about opportunities, and if we don't put it in there and we don't focus on them, they may get subsumed. So that's important for me. One of the things I wanted to know was, you've said in here that you've reviewed the legacy organisations, which are only very recently legacied, of development, Auckland Development and Waterfront as to their plans. Are you looking at plans, sort of legacy plans from previous council for some of these unlock and transform places? There's some really rich stuff in there. It may not be all relevant now, but I'd hope that you were.
Yes, through the Chair, yes, can confirm that.
Good, because I think there's been a lot of consultation and some of it. Also, the other thing I just wanted to say was in Henderson, in your, and I think it's really important, in your attachment A around, no, not A, in the body of the report on pages 33, when you talk about Henderson and leveraging of previous investment, in Henderson it's not just the council building and the rail station. There was huge investment put into public amenity, and I think that's a really important in its marketability, that it's got library, it's got swimming pool, it's got all those things that are walkable and give good amenity value, a plus Unitec. So I don't know whether you're ever going to review that bit of those tables, but I think that's important to put in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Webster.
Oh, very quickly, and this is very good, thank you. I'm just going back to what Mr Ross said earlier about using community for those parklets, which I think he mentioned, and empowering communities, and I know you're way off that yet, but you know, the communities actually do have quite a bit of ideas, quite a few ideas, and you know, if they're brought into the process to do some of that smaller stuff, it makes them feel belonging. So hopefully you took all that on board, I'm sure.
Yes, through Chair, as you will have seen down on the waterfront, early and constant community engagement is fundamental to the process and a key part of the forming the high-level project plans.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clive.
Well, I think we need to put support locations as well. We've got to keep it all in the family. I don't know why we're only having unlock there, so just saying let's put support in there. You don't need to list them though. I have a process question. So, and the example was New Lynn, so which is not one of the new ones. It's an ongoing support thing. I can't help but think at times there's a little bit of a dysfunction going on between perhaps what you're doing and what we're doing at council here. So If you take the Crown Lynn precinct at the back at New Lynn at the moment, that's occurring. We've got the developer who owns the whole entire block of land that's pretty heavily involved with pre-consent meetings with council about the park and roading, etc., etc. But I'm not aware Panuku, Auckland is there.